How you doing, guys? I'm Sean, welcome to Rambles with my camera. Guys, today's video, it's the photographer's tag. And I was actually being tagged by a good friend, Lexi, Alexandra Starr over in England there. Lexi's a wonderful photographer. And she's tagged me, she's done a video there, and 9 questions. I'm going to get straight into it here. And I'm going to put the questions down below. How did you first get into photography? Well, basically I got into it probably in the early 80s. Probably like most people, there was always a camera about the house, you know what I mean? Them days, obviously there was no digital then, so everybody was using photo albums, and every time you went on the holidays, you took a photograph, you get the free films back, so you're always taking photographs in and around where you lived, and that's how I really got into it. What was your first camera? Well, the first camera that I actually owned myself was a Helena 35 something, I can't remember what it is, I'll dig it out online, but basically it was we camera out of Argos, I think it was about 25 or 30 quid, had a couple of wee settings in the front, and just magical to have it. I remember getting it and taking some photographs with it and just feeling very special. I took a photograph up in 1982 up in the Falls Road at a parade, and I took a photograph at it, and I just felt something special. In fact, what I'll do is I'll put a link just above up here to go over, and that'll actually go into more detail of how I got into photography and my first camera and things like that. I'll go into a lot more detail rather than me keeping you guys back with this. But that was my first camera. My first main camera though was I learned on a Practica camera and an ME Super with Belfast Exposed, Sean McKernan, Danny Burke, and Steve Mullen, Frankie Quinn, and the rest of the guys. Danny Burke, I think, as I said. And it was like, I learned on them cameras, but my first camera that I purchased, owned SLR camera, was an Olympus OM2N. I love that camera, I have to say. I think I paid about 200 quid, 250 quid second hand, and that was my first camera, 1987 I think it was. Who are your photography heroes and inspirations? Basically photography heroes, well, when I started photography there was a guy called Bert Hardy, and Bert Hardy was a photographer, an English photographer, and he worked for the Picture Post and the local newspapers and things like that, and I liked this black and white, and I came across a Picture Post magazine excuse me, in one of the second-hand bookshops, and I remember looking at these photographs and I just liked that style. That was my first introduction to street photography and also social documentary. And next person probably being Don McCullum, of course, definitely very inspirational. I loved his dark, gritty work, obviously his war photography, but there was more to that man, like, you know what I mean. But that was like, especially I was coming from Belfast, there was a lot of rioting and bombings and shootings and things like that. A lot of press photographers throughout the world. Of course, Don McCullum, he actually was over in Northern Ireland over the years covering it, so I would have seen his photographs, was documenting the trouble. So probably who else? Yeah, Terry Fincher. Terry Fincher was also a photojournalist, English photojournalist, and excuse me, and I remember getting a book called The Fincher Files. He done a book, and it was all about his autobiography, about how he got into photography and things like that. And I think one of the photographs at the very start, there was a swan, and I think it was down in London. I think I'm almost certain that it was either near Tower Bridge or something like that. And the swan, he was walking through a street, and the swan was in the middle of the road, and there was a police officer, the old Bobby with hats, was standing shepherding it, trying to get it across the road. And I think he took a photograph. He went till the local paper, I think it was I don't know who it was, a Times or something like that, and they bought the photograph and they gave him a job as well. He was only a young lad, and that was his journey. And I remember reading his book, fascinating. He was travelling all around the world, covering all the conflicts and all the different people he had photographed. So Terry Fincher, the Fincher, his daughter ended up becoming a photographer. I think she's still a photographer. I think Terry Fincher's dead, but that was inspiration. There's also, I see inspiration in not everybody's work, in a lot of work. It doesn't have to be famous people or famous photographers. I've recently started to Flickr, and you're looking through the photographs, I think are astounding. There's a guy there I've actually recently found, Axel, and I can't pronounce his second name. I really completely forgot it. I'm assuming the guy's a German guy. I'm going to put the links down below to it down here. His name, absolutely fantastic photographer, and I mean fantastic, like amazing photographer. If you think of Steve McCurry with the colour photographs of the Afghan girl and all his modern night photographs, try to imagine a black and white version of it. To me, spectacular. I've yet to see anybody better than him, let's put it that way. That doesn't mean that there's not, just I haven't seen him. I just love his work. I think he's an absolutely fantastic photographer. But that's That's another one inspiration. But I find inspiration for everybody. What does photography mean to you? Simple thing is whenever I used to teach photography, the thing I taught the students before I even taught them how to use a camera was what we as photographers are doing. We're capturing the present so those in the future can look back at the past. You see, it's easy for us to get wrapped up in ourselves in this moment in time. Oh, we're capturing this moment in time, and we share the photographs, which is good, and people, good photo. Hopefully, they'll say the photographs are good, and we've caught something of interest in that. Well, I think it's bigger than this moment in time. It's actually for the future generation to sit and look. If you hear any clicking, by the way, it's a radiator there coming on. You'll hear the clicking, clicking, clicking. So that's what that is, in case you think it's the camera, the microphone. And we're capturing the photographs for the future generations to sit and look back at this time. So when we're taking photographs, when you're taking photographs, you want to make sure that you're going to capture something, not just for this moment in time, but imagine that the people in 100 years or 200 years time will be looking back at this photograph that you're creating. So I think capture the present so those in the future can look back at the past. There you go. How do you overcome photographer's block? Well, I went through photographer's block, completely blacked out photography for 12 years. That was through depression and through other things. But basically, that's all gone. Now, obviously, I'm back into it again. What I would do is I would look at other people's work. I would certainly, and also constantly strive to do something more than you did today. Like, in other words, you're sitting saying to yourself, you can get into the rut, you see. And if you're constantly repeating the same stuff and taking the photographs of the same stuff, it'll, like everything else, become boring. I don't care what, the nicest piece of food that you love to eat. If you keep eating it often enough, you're going to get bored with it. It will become things. So variety's a spice of life. I would tell you that try to prevent it first and foremost. But how do you overcome photographer's block? Look at other people's work. Start to absorb, what they're photographing, what they're capturing. If you start to see something you like, study it, and don't get sidetracked. Stay on that path, then look for other photographers who are photographing that particular style. Like last night I came across on a website, photojournalistic weddings. And I thought it was fantastic. It that's strange because whenever I was doing photography I never heard of that. And when I started looking at their style, it's like a reportage. We would have called it reportage, like weddings, but that's called photojournalism, journalistic weddings. So I spent probably about an hour sitting reading up on this and watching this here. Thought it was interesting. So if you happen to see something when you're in a slump, you see something you like, focus on it. Don't get sidetracked, all the mundane other stuff. Don't go back to your other stuff. Keep searching for other photographers' work to be inspired. And if that doesn't work, get back to your roots. Look at your old photographs. Look at the stuff you've created that you've really loved and a passion. Start to think how you created that piece of work. Think of how you took the photograph. What camera did you use? Why did you think? And it's just you're in a rut. If you've got a block, you're just in a rut. It's as simple as that. You have to change your mindset. You know what I mean? Wayne Dyer would say, you change the way you look at things, the thing you look at changes. And that's so true. That's what I would say to you today. Tip for noob photographers. I've never used the term noob. I never really knew what it was. I've Google searched it to find out. Well, apparently, according to Urban Dictionary, a noob, somebody who's noob photographer would be somebody who's new to photography, inexperienced sort of a person. There's other people saying it's actually quite an ignorant person, but I think the consensus is, and watching Lexi's answer, she'll be saying it's somebody who'd be a new photographer. So I would say for a new photographer, practice with your camera. Constantly practice your camera. I don't care if you're photographing your keyboard. I don't care if you're photographing, your garden or your pet dog or your mother, father, brother, sister, uncle, auntie. Take photographs, get to know that camera, check at different lightings. Even if you're sitting and you're watching something, hold your camera in your hand. Even if you're watching television, just to get the feel what it'd be like and the focus. And if you've got a focusing ring on it, get the feel of the camera, get to know the dials, pick a section of the camera to learn and to constantly stick at it. But know your camera inside out. Take photographs. Keep taking photographs. Be prepared to make a lot of mistakes and don't worry about it because your mistakes are generally, you can change it, you can turn that around for a new for the next photograph. Be prepared for trolls and things like that, and people not to like your work. In fact, people that detest your work. It's all cool, it's all relevant, and it's all part of the bigger picture. But just keep taking photographs, keep looking at other people's photographs for inspiration. But most importantly, get to know your camera inside and out, all the workings of it. Shooting manual, by the way, guys, so easy till slip into the automatic sections and the program modes and things like that. You have to, and I'm serious when I say you have to. I'm going to do a video on this. You have to shoot manual or at least know how to shoot in manual. You know what I mean? You don't have to do anything in life. The only thing you have to do in life is die. What I would say to you is you have to learn how to shoot a camera in manual. If you want to be a serious photographer, learn manual. And the reason is because you can only rely on these settings for so much, and they work, and they can be great, and they can make fantastic photographs. Well, your eye's going to make the photograph. But unless you know how to shoot a camera in manual, that when things don't go according to plan, you're trying to watch, observe, and lighten. So learn all that. Let's see. If you had to just shoot one genre, what would that be? Well, that's going to be a difference between, I thought about this, it's difficult enough. It's different between street photography and social documentary photography. And I've came to the conclusion that, because you see, social documentary and street photography, although they're different, they can crisscross. One could go into the other. You with me? But what I would say is I'd probably, if it had to choose one, it would probably be social documentary photography. And the reason is because in social documentary, I love taking portraits, street portraits, and portraits of people, not in the studio setting like that, mainly street portraits. And that can be covered under street photography, and it can also be covered under social documentary. But so if I'm doing something in social documentary, I could certainly keep taking portraits of people, street portraits, incorporating them in the article, incorporating them in the photo essay. But when I'm doing the street photography, you can't really cover the other social documentary stories and things like that. So if it came to the two of them, I would say social documentary. Any photography pet hates, definitely the biggest pet hate, I hate camera snobs. I hate them with a vengeance. I know hate's probably too tough of a term, but I detest them, let's put it that way. I've never liked them, and they've always been there, so they've always been. And you can spot them, by the way. They're the ones who are always first into the exhibition. They're the ones always trolling about, places, mainly in the arts anyway. But they're always there, the ones who could tell you the history of photography. They could tell you about every single photographer. They could tell you about the inner workings of a camera. They could tell you about, the rule of thirds, and they could, criticise this work, that work. But the same people are shit photographers in most cases. And I call them the red wine brigade. They usually hang about the exhibition centres with a red wine. Ha, 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 ha. Talking about fucking photographs and criticising or praising somebody's work and haven't got a clue really. Like, they're textbook photographers. And when you turn around and say, tell them, they could be on keyboard warriors. There's another one. The old warriors, they're sitting, critiquing people's work or people's channels. And then when you turn around and say, so let me see your work, let me see your photographs. Where's your photographs? And you go, well, I haven't actually got a body of work together yet, but I am very familiar. Have you got any photographs? No, I haven't got no photographs. No, it's not. I haven't got. Have you got an exhibition there? Have you done it? No, I haven't. But I don't need to. I'm well read in fucking books, things like that. So, camera snobs to test, keyboard warriors with no portfolios and no work, or pet hate. There you go. Okay, I had a slight problem there with the camera. The camera had actually stopped on me, and I was lucky enough it just stopped at the last question 9, so I'm just going to be reshooting that last one. Thankfully it never happened halfway through. Jeez, that would have been, you'd have heard me screaming from where we are in the world. So this is, we're going on till question 9. Any photography faux pas? Now, the only thing I can think about, and technically is it, I'm even trying to work it out. Is it, a faux pas? I was a freelance photographer. It was in the late 80s, and I had an Olympus OM2N, and I had a power winder until it. It was at a funeral, and so the husband of the man was murdered. He was a Catholic. He was murdered. He was head of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, Belfast, and I was at his funeral, and his wife and his family was at the graveside as they were obviously lowering him into the thing. And I remember raising my camera up and focusing in on the wife of the man who was murdered, and I hit the shutter, and of course I hit it's like about 2.5, 3 frames a second. It was on continuous, and it was at the stage that everybody was like quiet in the cemetery, and we were only like about 50 foot away, and I just went about 3 frames a second. But it almost sounded like gunfire. It was that loud, and it was. I remember even the press photographers hitting me with their elbows. And it was at the size of me, maybe 20 years of age, and them banging me with their elbows to say, "Fuck's sake, what did you do that for?" And I remember the lady's face looking over at it. Everybody turned around, like, and looked at me. I felt like a nit, I should say, and rightly so. But that's the only thing that stuck with me, and I certainly don't want to be thinking that I'll ever do anything like that again, or, you know, because it was horrible. And I remember, you know, different situation then, and I look back on that as I'll never forget it, you know. But that's possibly the last one. There you go. It's a negative one to end on, isn't it? So listen, there's your 9 questions, guys. I'm going to put the links down below. Thanks very much, Lexi, for giving me a shout there with that. But basically, Lexi's already tagged a lot of people there. A couple of the ones I would have tagged as well. So what I'm going to do is, if you're watching this here video, you're a photographer, you've got a YouTube channel, you're tagged. So there's all the questions down below. Head over and see Lexi's YouTube channel as well. I'll put all the links down below. And I say, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found it interesting anyway. Send you love from Ireland. If you haven't already done so, please do subscribe. You can check me out on Twitter and on Facebook, and also rambleswithmycamera.com. You can check out my Flickr page. And as I say, I tell you guys, all the links down below for any of the people there that I've mentioned. And have we look at the questions. Thanks again, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.